Hidden Gems, Episode 55, Publisher Spotlight on Zoch Verlag. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
This is Bill.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome back, folks.
Glad to be back. It's felt like it's been a while.
With our spotty release schedule.
It has been, and we actually hadn't gotten together for a while, and my wife was looking at me inside the house and saying, why are you still here? What have you
do
done?
something to
What did you
upset
do,
Chris?
Bill?
Right, exactly.
Well, it is all Bill's fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always.
I'll own that.
We have been doing a lot of different things, though. I just got back from Miami recently.
That's right.
Went down and watched my Miami Dolphins
Oh, yeah.
just lay the absolute whooping on the Denver Broncos. I told y'all about that, right?
Yeah, there's 70, I think.
Fourth highest scoring NFL football game in history. And
Yeah.
we were there.
Oh, that's
It was like a
crazy.
freaking party the whole time. Everybody was into it. Scoring happening all over the place. It was just a blast.
Yeah. Was your whole family there?
My dad and my youngest son.
Okay. Oh, man.
My only son that's a Dolphins fan. The others betrayed me and are
Okay.
Chiefs fans with their mom because it's just so easy to be a Chiefs fan right now, you know?
Say, if they're only Colts fans. But okay.
Yeah, no, we had a good time. Hopefully I didn't curse them right there. I feel like I remember talking about the Dolphins around this time last year because they were playing really well. And then Tua got knocked out with a concussion. So hoping that doesn't happen because I'm feeling good about the Dolphins this season. They're playing well, but that's something I've been up to recently at least. So.
Oh,
You were
cool.
just
Is that
up to
it?
something else too, weren't you? Hiking.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. I just
'Cause I-
hiked
'cause
Mount
I was-
Mitchell.
Yeah, I was gonna
Old man.
key off of your story because we
Okay,
were just
well,
out in the
I'll
mountains.
throw
too.
that in. I'm not even into my main banter yet, folks. You know,
oh,
a lot
wow.
of people have been telling us that they enjoy our banter section. I think maybe that's what all people just listen to anymore, and they turn us off. once
Because
we
all the
start talking
games
about
we
the games.
review are old and boring anyway.
Crap games that you can't get even if you want.
They're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, the banter's over. We'll just turn it off now. So I'm like, we should just buy into the banter now. I'm invested.
Well, if you want lots of banter, chime into our Patreon because all we do is banter on Patreon.
That's right.
So-
We just talk about all kinds of random stuff. But yes, I hiked Mount Mitchell, which is a mountain in North Carolina, from generally based, not really based. The lowest point you can access the mountain. How about that? Realistically, Jason is looking at me skeptically.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay,
What are you trying to say?
I'm just saying I did it the hardest way possible.
Started
Oh,
very,
okay.
very, very, very bottom.
Yeah.
Because you can drive to the top.
You can drive to the top and
Okay.
walk like 200 feet.
That's
and
always
be at the
demoralizing.
summit.
Like,
Oh,
I've,
yeah.
I've hiked Grandfather Mountain a couple times, which is an awesome hike.
It is awesome.
Out in the North Carolina mountains, but it's another one of those ones you could just drive to the top, and that
Yeah.
always just kind of is like a little defeating. You're like, well, I just did an awesome hike, but I also could have just driven here.
But you don't get that sense of satisfaction. Yeah, it's funny. So let me talk about the hike, and then I'll tell that story. It was 12 miles, 6 up, 6 down. It's about 3,700 feet of elevation over the entire hike.
That is a lot of elevation.
It was brutal. It's the hardest hike I've done in a long time because it's like 90 to 95% incline, and then the rest of 5% is horizontal. You're never going down along a ridge line or anything like that.
Did you do that by yourself?
I did do it by myself, much to the chagrin of my family. They don't like me doing that. But Mount Mitchell Trail is pretty trafficked.
Right.
I didn't feel like I was in danger.
Yeah.
But it is the highest mountain east of the Mississippi. And got to the top, felt really satisfied, and there were like 100 people up there taking pictures with the signs. And they walked up the paved road up to the summit, and they were like, yeah, we made it. And I was like, oh my gosh. I just walked for like 4 hours. And they're like, we made it. And I was like, oh, give me a break. Like, I know some people can't hike Mount Mitchell. I'm not poo-pooing on that. It was just a little bit deflating. Not for me. I guess we should talk about this on Backstage sometime. But, like, I kind of wish that the people that could had hiked it because I think it would be more satisfying, than
Oh yeah,
just, like,
it's definitely satisfying
driving to the
pull
top.
off that kind of stuff.
Kind of feels like cheating. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a nice hike. You're doing
is it-
it, I think.
Well, I'm tentatively scheduled to do it because a buddy of mine wants to ruck it.
Oh,
So
gosh, dude.
for anybody out there who
You better
doesn't
think twice about that.
anybody who doesn't know what rucking is, it is where you walk usually. It doesn't have to be up a mountain, but you walk with a pack with weight in it. So like
Hey,
30 40 pounds.
A rucksack.
Rucksack.
A rucksack. I think it's like the military actually used Mount Mitchell, I think, to do it. Like the best way to get in shape is to just walk with weight on your back. But yeah, he wants to do this as like get out of your comfort zone thing. I think there's a book out there called The Comfort Crisis where it's like you should do something at least once a year or something like that where you have at least a 50% chance of failure.
Okay.
And so I've kind of gotten roped into that. I have not trained very much aside from we were just out in the mountains too. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But
I'm guessing that's not going to be good for your body. That's what I'm thinking. It's like
yeah,
knees
I'd be most concerned about my knees, to be honest.
Right.
Like coming
Yes, for
down,
sure.
like going up would be hard. Coming down would just destroy your knees.
Oh, absolutely. Do not go down with a rucksack. Absolutely.
So we were actually just out in the mountains this past weekend too. While you were there, we went out to Maggie Valley, which is
Dollywood, baby.
oh, it's not that far. That's Gatlinburg, but Pigeon
Close
Forge.
by.
Yeah, we did chimney tops. Have you ever done the chimney tops hike?
No.
So that actually turned out to be way harder than we thought it was going to be. So we went with another family who are our old neighbors, and they have some little kids. Props to Emily, who's our neighbor. She hiked that hike with a baby strapped to her.
Oh, God.
Oh, my goodness.
But they all made it, and it was good. It was 1,400 feet over 1.75 miles. So I mean, it was a lot of steps,
That's steep, yeah.
but it was a cool hike. It's in the Smokies National Park. And on the way out, we saw the biggest herd of elk that I've ever seen. So like,
Really?
just sitting in a field next to the visitor center, it was crazy.
That's kind of, well, you would know, Bill. You're kind of
No.
from there.
Yeah,
That-
but
that would be weird, right?
It was
Yeah.
super weird.
I've never seen that.
I haven't either. Those are an out west.
Yeah, I was going to
animal.
say in Colorado many
Right.
times.
Yeah,
Right.
these were
On the
huge,
North Carolina-Tennessee border, never. I've never seen
huge
that.
elk, like massive antlers.
Yeah,
and stuff.
I think he's freaking
And
out.
there were
I don't
probably-
think
Are you sure?
There were probably 30 or 40 of them.
little psilocybin mushrooms there. With
No, because we were driving out of the park and like traffic was just backed up on both sides of the road for half a mile because everybody had stopped to get out of their cars to go take pictures of them. But it was wild.
Natural.
Have you ever heard an elk? Like, it is the creepiest, wildest sound
He was just
ever
playing
too.
it before you came.
I looked up
Do it.
YouTube. Here, I'll play. It's a weird sound. Sounds like a ring wraith,
It does sound like a ring wraith.
but
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, it's funny. We've got this mountain theme. 3 weeks ago, I guess I went to Hendersonville and stayed in an Airbnb 1.7 miles away from the Sierra Nevada Brewery.
Yeah.
And went mountain biking with a good friend of mine I went from high school with. He's now a college professor at Clemson. He's a tourism professor. He teaches out there. And we mountain biked in Hendersonville. And if you know that area, I mean, there is a lot of, I mean, there is no flat trails there either, but it's kind of North Carolina, a mountain biking mecca kind
For
of.
sure, yeah.
Kind of place. We were talking some about, from a tourism perspective and writing grants and creating trailheads around some of these rural towns, how that can mean the difference between the community surviving or not, because people are moving in because it was like, we got access to the trail, let me go here and put a party.
Right.
But I'm telling you, as far as something that almost killed me, I mean,
I'm glad you
going
made it
up
back
and down
okay.
those trails, it was crazy. But also on those trails, you're talking about wildlife. We did come up to a father and son who'd parked their bikes kind of in the middle of the trail and almost ran into them on the downhill side. And they were watching a mama black bear with their 3 cubs, and she had treed the cubs up a tree, I guess, because they got spooked by the mountain bikes. And
Right.
so that was kind of cool to watch. But we probably just
Yes.
hung out for like 20 minutes waiting for the mom to okay for the cubs to come down and run off in the woods, because we were definitely not gonna
No way.
chance that.
They're pretty docile unless you get near
The mama.
the babies.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
I
they
was
kind
going
of
to say,
freak out.
for as many animals as we've encountered, I have never seen a bear in the wild.
Really?
Yeah.
They're all over in Western North Carolina now.
Yeah.
All very much so.
Yeah, but there are docile though. I mean, they're just not really going to mess with you unless you do something stupid.
Right.
So,
Sierra Nevada is awesome, though.
Sierra Nevada
We
is-
went there this past weekend. First time I'd been there.
Yeah.
It's a huge, huge brewery. They have a massive outdoor stage and area and big old Adirondack chairs and stuff. It's a good
Nashville's
place.
got a couple of awesome huge breweries. You know, Old Belgium is there too. Have y'all been to that one in Nashville?
old or new?
Or Old Belgium. New Belgium. Where did that come from?
Part of the old guy will be played by Chris tonight.
Down into my cup a little bit here. Yes. Sorry about that.
I haven't been to New Belgium. Where else did we go? We went to Burial. We went to Highland and Wicked Weed. So.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good beer tour. I got one more story I got to tell, too.
Tell us. I got more to talk about. So just go for
okay.
it.
So I'll pop in here. So 2 weeks ago, Ken, the guy who's playing with us pretty regularly, was selling some games at Meeple Brews in Morrisville, North Carolina. And so I thought I'd pop over and see what games were there to sell and maybe sell a couple of mine. I did have to hang my head. I sold Tonga Bonga, but the guy wanted it.
Shame,
he loved it.
Shame.
I'm sure you were crushed
He
to
paid
get
a
rid of
mint
that
for
baby.
it.
I know I basically gave it away to you, but shame.
That's right. It was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. Good investment. Anyway, on the way over, I thought I smelled something funky in my car. I pulled over the side of the road and thought my car had caught on fire. I went up and put my hands on the hood of my car, and it was cool. So I was thinking, okay, the car's okay. I must have driven by something on the outside. So I drove the rest of the way there, get out, go in and kind of look at the games. I come back out to the car because I'd actually left my games. I wasn't sure whether I was going to sell them or not. I'm just going to check the lay of the land. I look inside, and the whole car is full of smoke. I mean, it is just 100% dense. And I'm like, okay, do I go to my car or not? Do I just let it blow? Or, because this is not a good thing. So I go and open it up. The smoke is just billowing out. I open up all four doors and then kind of step away again. And it's like a horrible, acrid.
Electric.
Yeah, electric.
Yeah.
Terrible smell. Then I got the games and then sold them. By the way. So he
come from a smoke-filled home.
Right. But Ken was right. I sold like almost all of them in the first 2 minutes, which was kind of funny. Anyway, I had the car towed away. Everybody who saw this car was like, what the hell happened? It's an SUV. It's flat where the spare tire is underneath this metal plate. It burned like a 8 to 10 inch hole through that metal plate, so you could see down into where
Holy crap.
the spare tire was. I just resolved all of that today. They totaled it because there's no way to get the smell out of that car. Right?
They totaled it because of that?
Yeah, because they were going to replace all the interior, and you still wouldn't know whether it would get the smell out or not.
Yeah.
So anyway, totaled it, but they just don't know what happened because there is no battery there. There's no electronic component that anybody knows. So I trade that in and getting a Toyota Prius Prime, which is a plug-in.
Ooh.
So it's like one of the
nice Prius, said nobody.
Exactly. That's what I was going to joke about.
I will say the new ones
Yeah.
look better than the old ones.
It looks pretty sporty. I mean, but one of my friends said, "Oh my God, Bill, you know that Prius drivers are the most hated driver of any car in the world." And it's like, no, I didn't know that, but I looked it up and I can confirm that's true. And it's like, you're not going to be one of those ones who drive it really slow, are you? And I'm like, of course not, no. But what's really cool about it is you have these graphs in it that tells you how much electricity that you're using. And so I'm watching that graph. I'm going really slow. So I've already turned into that guy. Anyway, so who's next?
We going around again?
Oh man, are we?
I don't know. You can save it for next time.
We're only at 16 minutes.
Yeah, the people want more. I got more. We'll talk about more.
What you got?
Yeah? All right. I got a
Go for
graphic novel to talk about.
All right.
So I know I'm pretty bad to recommend these really long graphic novels, right? That are like 400 pages long, these omnibus. People are like, I'm not going to pay $75, $100 for a book, Chris.
For a comic book.
So I hear you. Listener. Got something for you to try, okay? So I was actually going to talk about a couple. I'm just going to talk about one, okay? The one that I read recently-ish that I thought was the best one. And that's The Last Ronin by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Do you guys recognize those names? Do you know what they created?
Sound familiar.
Isn't he a Steven Seagal movie?
No, these are the guys that created Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
The original creators, like the comic book creators, pre-cartoon. Mm-hmm. Okay? So they recently released a story called The Last Ronin, which is canon, okay? Because it is written by them. That doesn't necessarily mean it's canon. Lots of people can write Turtles, but they've confirmed that it is in canon. And basically the idea of the story is this is taking place many, many years in the future, like a dystopian future. and all of the turtles are dead except for one. And so he's the last Ronin. I'm obviously not going to tell you who that is, because part of the fun is figuring out which one that it is.
Don't tell it.
Right? I'm not going to tell you which one. I will only say that
It's definitely not Michelangelo.
I think you could come up with ideas for I think you could come up for ideas of why you think it might be any of them, and it wasn't the one that I was expecting. Let's put it that way. But basically, the idea is much of the book is written in flashback, so it shows you in chapters basically how each other turtle dies, and it's a tough read in a way. It's a graphic novel, but they're kind of brutal deaths, and it's hard to explain when you grew up with these characters in a very lighthearted way, watching the Saturday morning cartoons, and then you see them in a more serious take, and you see them getting killed.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just a really weird experience, and it gets you really invested in the story. So there's that. The last Ronin, whoever that is kind of on a revenge tour, trying to take revenge on his brother's killers and bring honor back to the family name, and how the story is going to continue into the future, if at all. Okay. So that's The Last Ronin, and it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot.
So this is cheaper than $70? Is that
It
is that
is.
the
It's
point
going to
of
be
the
like
story?
$25 on Amazon. Yeah. You could easily read it in one setting. I read it basically
I have to say, I'm going through some funky emotional spaces over here watching Chris kind of get misty-eyed over Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
totally was.
As much as he does, and it's yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to watch here, guys. I'm telling you.
It's weird watching your childhood faves get brutalized and bloodily murdered, and you're like, wow, I'm not even sure how to process this, but it's worth reading. If you're like, I don't really care about graphic novels, I'm not too sure, try this one. Especially if you're of our age group. Well, not you, Bill. And you grew up watching these things, and
That's funny.
Like,
I do have a related story of going to a fair where they had whack-a-mole when I was, I don't know, probably your age. And I had a young nephew that is your age. And the giveaway was the Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I was totally in the zone. I was whacking every ball. So I was winning every time. And I had people coming up giving me money so I could win the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for their kids.
Bill's a ringer.
I was a ringer there. I've lost all my fast twitch muscles, but it was funny. I was in the zone that day.
Huh. Nice. Well, not to turn things too serious, but I have a book that I just finished that I really enjoyed. So I read a book recently, I don't think I've talked about it on the show, called The Wager. So it's by David Grann. He's like a historian. So he writes like a dramatization of, I guess it's historical fiction. Oh, no, it's not fiction. I don't know. I'm just going to stop trying to describe it. But he basically writes a narrative of a historical situation. They're like historical stories that most people just never heard of before. So The Wager is a story about a British Navy ship in the 1800s, I think, that was sent on a mission to take down a Spanish galleon that was carrying like a massive amount of gold when the British and the Spanish were at war. They were sent around Cape Horn, around the southernmost point of South America, which Bill is quite familiar with, I'm sure.
I've sailed those waters.
Yeah, so it's the roughest sea on Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the story of the ship, the whole fleet shipwrecks going around Cape Horn, and it's the story about them like washing up on shore on this island and all the stuff that goes down. And some of them make it home, and so there's like all these differing stories about what actually happened while they were there, and like a court trial, a court martial goes down, and there's all this stuff. It's fascinating, all the things that happened in the story. So highly recommend. But he actually had a book prior to that I picked up recently called Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
And it's a tough story to read. It is a true story. But again, one that I feel like most people in the United States just don't even know even happened. Mm-hmm. But basically, the Osage Indian tribe in Oklahoma, because of the way the government like moved them around, they ended up on land that was super oil rich. And so because of that, the government ended up paying them millions and millions and millions of dollars to get access to this oil that they had just moved them onto a reservation on top of. And so you had these relatively small tribe of Indians who became fabulously wealthy. And so the story is about this series of murders that started because of all these guys trying to get access to the money, basically. And it's a wild story. It's actually how the advent of the FBI came about.
No way.
So it was the transition from like your sheriff lawman, like Western lawman, to what eventually became the FBI. It's a fascinating story. It's very sad, just the amount of trauma and terror that these people went through. But I bring it up because there's actually a movie version of this coming out, I think, this month.
Yes.
Oh, very cool.
Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro. So I'm pretty excited to check that out.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting story about a time period that I feel like has been forgotten. For the most part, and it's kind of an important story. So check it out.
The trailers look good. It had me intrigued for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Was that enough banter?
I don't know. I got more.
Did we overdo it? Did
Probably.
we satiate the people?
Nah, we're only at 25 minutes.
Perfect.
We've gone way beyond that before.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on?
Sure.
Do you have something? Are you being serious?
Oh, yeah, no. I was just going to joke. I just finished Lessons in Chemistry, which is really like a women's book.
Wait, is that the show with Brie Larson?
Yeah, that's coming out soon.
Yeah.
The book's really good, but it's basically a 1950s women trying to succeed in STEM stuff.
Right.
The books, I really enjoyed it, but it'll be interesting to see how the TV series turns out.
Yeah,
I'm
I would
excited
like to
about it,
check that
actually.
out too. Yeah.
It's a true story.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but it's really well written, and
Probably accurate for the period, though, right?
probably.
From what I understand of it, I don't know a lot, but it looked interesting.
The end of the audiobook has an interview with the writer, and she talked about learning chemistry and stuff like that. When she started at first Googling stuff, and she quickly found out that, wait a minute, I'm putting stuff in here they didn't know in the 50s. So she had to find a chemistry book to reference. That was a like 1950s chemistry book. And then Rowing Crew is part of it. And she actually rows in a cruise ship. And apparently, if that's your thing, you're really into that thing. And it's what you talk about a lot. And there's just a lot of nuance to being able to row crew well. And that's another facet of this book that's kind of cool.
Have you ever read Boys in the Boat?
No.
So if you like crew, it's the story of, I'm not going to be able to remember the year, but the U.S. rowing team in the Olympics that was in Germany during World War II.
Oh, wow.
So Nazi Germany hosted the Olympics. And so it's about them training and taking down the German team in those Olympics in Berlin, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while since I read the book, but fantastic book.
Cool. And then Chris is going to talk about comics.
And I'll talk about comics. Just think about how we've
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dying off.
enriched our listeners' lives by talking about all these incredible books, The Crew and Lessons in Chemistry and The Last Ronin. I got to bring it back to the nerdy stuff. You know me. I'm keep it simple.
We didn't even talk about a single video game this time.
We didn't.
We made it to 27 minutes.
Well,
Next episode.
yes. I'm playing one that I'm liking a lot.
I've got one. I know you've got one.
I've got a couple.
Got a couple. You got one too?
I do.
Is it spooky?
No.
Well, we can't talk about it next episode.
I'll try to find something spooky.
All right. We'll move on here. Cocktail time. So as mentioned at the top of the show, we're talking about games by Zoch Verlag. And one of those games that we're reviewing tonight is Kilt Castle. So I thought, what better to go with Kilt Castle than a drink that has some scotch in it.
Oh, awesome.
A little scotch whiskey here. So this is the Rusty Nail.
Oh.
It's a pretty classic drink, actually.
It is. I've had Rusty Nails.
Yeah. So this is 2 ounces of Scotch whiskey, half an ounce of Drambuie, added to a lowball glass and stirred, and then you just add a preferably large ice cube garnished with lemon peel. That is not trivial. The lemon is kind of necessary for this drink, kind of like with an old-fashioned with the orange peel, in my opinion. Got to twist it. You get the oil in there. You rub the rim of the glass with the lemon. That's all important. So,
What is Drambuie?
Drambuie is kind of like a Scotch liqueur that's flavored with honey and different herbs. So it's like sweet. That's why the drink is sweet. You need to take it easy on the Drambuie or it will overpower.
Oh, yeah. It's really good. I like it.
Yeah, at most half an ounce. You could probably even back it off a little more than that if you like your drink a little stronger. Well,
I need to come in with you when you're making the drinks, because I've had this house renovation where I put in a bar and I have no idea how to really be a good bartender.
oh, come on.
So
You make all the fancy drinks.
oh no, I don't. Not like your stuff. I mean, these have got like subtlety and nuance. So.
I will say my wife has become the drink maker in our family. I've basically
awesome.
given up on it at this point. Like, not because I don't enjoy it, I still do, but I used to make drinks all the time. She's just gotten so good at it that I'm like, man, I don't need to make drinks anymore.
Man,
'Cause
that's incredible.
She enjoys it, and she's gotten very good at it. So
What a gift.
I was going to
Yeah.
say, that's awesome to have somebody with that superpower in your house. So, yeah.
I will say my wife, Talia, she makes a mean old-fashioned. That's her favorite drink, and she does it way better than I do, but it's because she's real experienced at it. She's made a couple. All right. Quick publisher spotlight on Zoch Verlag. Not a whole lot on this company, but I found a little bit. So Zoch Verlag is a Munich-based publisher that was founded in 1987 by Albrecht Verstein and game designer Klaus Zoch. I think most people will probably know who that is. He's a pretty well-known designer. They describe themselves as making games primarily... This is the company I'm talking about. Says that they describe themselves as making games primarily for children and families, which I would say is pretty accurate, often with high-quality wooden components, they say.
Yeah.
Albrecht and Klaus were childhood friends, and they said one of their biggest early board gaming influences was Civilization.
Ooh.
Again,
that's not child friendly.
what kids play Civ? I feel like we've talked about this before. I'm not talking about Civ on the computer. I'm talking about the board game.
Oh, yeah, that's probably complicated.
It's super complicated. Okay, so I've played Mega Civ, which is basically Civ. I can't fathom children or even young teens playing Civ. Can you? Have you
No,
played
I
Civ?
mean, I've not played it, but I can imagine.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No.
They were just built different back then.
Yes, Chris, we were.
Oh, yeah. I guess I'm talking to you here, Bill. Yeah. Well, it's impressive. So, yeah, that's where they cut their teeth on, Civ. In 1987, Klaus designed the game, say this carefully, Bossack.
This has been on my mining list for a long time.
Yes.
It was one of the first ones that I found and put on there.
Yeah.
And I've been interested to try it.
I have too. It sounds really interesting. So Bossack, or Bandu, as it's also known, is a dexterity game.
BAU.
Bossack. It's a dexterity stacking game where apparently there's like an auction or a bidding component where if somebody hands you a piece, I think how it works, and you don't want to put it on because you might think you might make the structure topple or something, you can bid a number of beans or something and it passes to the next player or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Sounds interesting. But that was his first design, and that's really what caused him to take off. It was nominated for the Spiel, and it was also licensed by Milton Bradley in the United States, selling more than 100,000 copies.
Whoa.
So quite popular back in the day.
What was it called in the U.S.?
Bossack.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. That's bold, but okay.
It's bold, yeah. So that success gave them the early capital needed to found Zoch Verlag. They continued on with some success until they eventually came into some financial trouble in 1995. However, somewhat unfortunately, Albrecht's parents passed during this time, and he received some inheritance that he actually invested into the company, which kept them alive. And then they went on to gain more solid financial footing, releasing quite a flurry of games, some of which were very popular. Bamboleo, Chicken Cha-Cha-Cha, Via Paletti, which also won the Spiel des Jahres, Niagara, which also won the Spiel des Jahres.
Deservedly.
They can't all be winners. And so it's either Picamino or Picamino. What do you say, Jason? You know the game I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. I would probably say Picamino, but that's probably wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a Knizia game. But yeah, I always feel like I'm saying it wrong.
It's probably supposed to be Domino, so I
So,
guess it would be
Picamino.
Picamino.
Yeah, that's probably right. In 2010, the company was bought by the Simba Dickey Group, which brought the company further financial stability, and they've been pretty well off pretty much ever since. And as mentioned, I mentioned the Spiel winners, but they actually have several Kinderspiel DRs winners as well, which is Children's Game of the Year, because they do focus pretty heavily on children and family games. So,
Fun.
that's Zoch Verlag.
That was a good little book report.
There you go. I worked really hard on it.
Nice.
A little fun fact, but Niagara was also released as Iguazu Falls. And
Really?
Internationally. Same game.
How did you learn? Where did you hear that?
It's on the box, I think.
He doesn't believe you.
I don't believe you.
You look it up.
I'm going to fact check you with my non-existent internet out here.
Right.
All right, so I think we talked enough, yeah?
Yeah.
You guys want to get into these reviews?
Let's go, man.
All right, let's do it.
We thought we would go on an exciting but peaceful photo safari. Well, it was certainly exciting. While searching for a pride of cheetahs, a never-before-seen Kalimambo suddenly emerged from the tall savanna grass. He shot through our group at high speed. Before we could recover from the surprise, there was a thundering sound of someone charging at full speed. Rhino! It was crystal clear. This territorial animal will not tolerate intruders in its backyard. Everyone immediately fled, running as fast as possible after the Kalimambo to avoid being overtaken by the oncoming Colossus. Who will manage to escape without damage? Be careful, there are also piles of elephant dung here and there, which makes it even more difficult for fleeing safari goers. Kalimambo.
It's pretty good flavor text.
Wow.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
That's just made this game come alive for me.
I was just going to say, I have a whole new perspective on what was really going on there.
Seriously,
So,
now that I know that.
So I guess that answers the question of what the animal at the front is. We were always wondering, if is it a bird? What is it? It's a Kalimambo.
Is that a bird?
No, I think it's the Kalimambo. It says a never-before-seen Kalimambo.
It's a unique, one-of-a-kind.
Is this like a fictional animal, like a dodo?
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Well, dodo's
I guess
not
we have to look it
fictional.
up now because I don't know.
See,
That's what
you
I
know-
assumed.
You research that.
Chris, you know Dodo's not fictional. Right?
Or shut up, Bill. An extinct animal. Anytime I think about dodo, I think about Alice in Wonderland, and I'm like, those aren't real. Wasn't there an Alice in Wonderland?
Not that I know of. Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Dodos.
No,
What is
there's a dodo in Alice in Wonderland.
Is
Right? Isn't there?
Yeah, in the book at least. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's in the Disney movie.
Bill, you're confusing me. All right. Kalimambo. Published in 2011, obviously by Zoch Verlag, but also by 999 Games. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 7,722. Designer of this game is Antonio Scrittore. This is his only published design. Brief rule summary for Kalimambo, and this should be pretty brief. Kalimambo is a simultaneous action selection game where the players are trying to avoid stepping in piles of poop. Yes, you did hear that right. That's true.
Elephant dung.
Elephant dung
Be proper.
by way of simultaneous card play. The board in Kalimambo is simple. It consists of several square spaces that line the periphery of a four-sided square board. The players will all have a single player piece, and they will randomly line these pieces up in a single file line, one piece per space with no empty spaces between the pieces. At the front of the line is placed a black wooden piece, the Kalimambo, and then at the back of the line is placed a gray wooden rhino piece. Once the line is set, 6 brown wooden poop pieces are placed in random spaces along the track. Each player receives 12 cards numbered 0 to 11, and the black Kalimambo piece also has a 12-card 0 through 11 deck as well. Player's turn in Kalimambo is super simple. Each player looks at their hand of cards, chooses a card to play, and once everybody's picked a card, the cards are all simultaneously revealed. That's it. It should be noted that Kalimambo, the piece that starts again at the front of the line, is also playing, quote unquote, and that a card from Kalimambo's deck will be randomly revealed at this time as well. The players will now advance their figures in order of highest number played to lowest number played. So whoever played the highest card will move their figure to the front of the line. Then the next highest number played will move their figure to the front of the line, and so on and so on. If more than one player plays the same number, the player that is further back in the line is the only one that moves. If a player plays their 0 card, they will not move from their current space. They will just stay where they are for that round. If on a player's movement to the front of the line they step in a poop pile, they will receive 3 negative points. If Kalimambo lands on a poop pile, the player that played the lowest card receives 3 negative points. And lastly, and most importantly, I mean honestly, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand this. If a gap ever forms between the rhino and the back of the line, the rhino will immediately move forward until he is again at the end of the line. However, whoever is at the back of the line at this point will take a number...
Gets gored to death.
Gets gored to death. Will take a number of negative points equal to the number of spaces that the rhino had to move to catch up to the back of the line. Now, once all of the movement has taken place, the players will then start a new round by selecting another card to play. However, it's important to note that once you play a card, that card is out of the game, and you can't play that same card again. Play continues until all of the players have played all 12 of their cards. At this point, the player with the least negative points wins the game. That's generally how you play Kalimambo.
Awesome job, Chris, as always.
You got to avoid that doo-doo.
The doo-doo and the rhino double horn.
That's right. Don't want to get gored.
Yep.
So as I mentioned, this is a simultaneous action selection game, which isn't necessarily unique. However, there is something unique going on here in that there are 2 pieces on the board that are not player-controlled pieces, right? Mm-hmm. They're kind of like agents of chaos in a way. You've got Kalimambo at the front of the line, who is kind of playing, but it's kind of like an automaton. It's just moving randomly. Mm-hmm. And then you have the rhino at the back of the line, who is only going to move when there is space in front of him, basically. So you have to be accounting for these 2 pieces. So how did you feel about that mechanism? How do you feel like it affected the gameplay? Did it add a lot? Could you account for it? How did you feel about it? What do you think about that element of the game?
I don't think you can account for anything in this game.
Here we go.
If I'm being honest, just come out swinging.
And now everybody just jumped to the next review. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, stick around. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I think you're just flipping random numbers and trying to guess what other people do. I suppose if you were able to perfectly card count and read everyone else's minds in terms of what cards they were going to play, you could maybe sort of start to get an idea of what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You can see the rhino coming a little bit in terms of, well, a gap has formed and there's one person who's the barrier between the rhino and him charging.
Right.
And you can start to be, okay, well, maybe I should play a higher numbered card here so that I get to move first.
Get out of the way, right? Yeah.
There's definitely some of that going on here. But I think there's a lot of just pick a number and see what happens kind of stuff going on too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, it's all that. If it didn't come out clearly in what Chris said, you just don't want to be in the back of the line ever. And so that is all kind of the whole strategy and all.
You can get whacked.
You can get whacked with really big numbers. You get a minus point if you land on the poop. And that's
3 minus points.
Oh, 3 minus points. And that's kind of bad, but being in the back can end up being really big. Right.
Yeah, so we played this game one time at my house, and all 3 of my kids were there, and they were like, we want to play. And we were like, oh, well, this game actually does play 7 people. So we played with 7, and all 3 of my kids played.
Probably the best way to play it.
But I think my poor son Jude, I think he got walloped by the rhino for 15 points or something like that at one point.
Ken did as well, I think.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of times. Yeah, you can. So I'll go ahead and mention this. So you can definitely do this dirty trick with the rhino where, remember I mentioned if you play a 0, you just don't move. Well, if you are immediately in front of the rhino, you can choose that time to play your 0 and not move and let everybody move way far ahead of you. So then when you do move, there's this really big gap basically between you and the pack. And the person who gets hit, you're pretty much out of the game at that point, right? I mean, because it's a huge number of points. But it is funny if it doesn't happen to you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I will say everybody was laughing and having a good time. Turned on some mambo music and we had a laughing good time playing it.
Yeah. I was thinking about these pieces a little bit more, though, before we move off them to something else. The Kalimambo piece really is truly just kind of like an agent of chaos because the way that it moves is completely random. At least the people at the table, you kind of can see what they're incentivized to try to do or where they want to land, and maybe you can vaguely get a sense of what you think people are trying to do. Kalimambo will just do anything. right? Because it's just a random card flip. And so it can create just weird chaos that I'm not really a huge fan of. But I will say the Rhino, despite the fact that it can just wallop you, it's kind of necessary in a way. Let's see if I can explain this in a way that makes sense and see if y'all agree with me. Because nobody ever wants to jump forward into that poop pile, right?
Right.
So let's say, for example, we're playing a 7-player game, a 6 or 7-player game, and there's 2 spaces between the next poop. Okay, so in some ways it's safer to try to delay and play a low number and let other people go, and then once they land on the poop, jump in front of them where there's a little bit more space likely between the next one. But if you're hanging towards the back, you're putting yourself more at risk of getting hit by the Rhino, right?
Right.
So you're constantly balancing, do I just need to get out of the back of the line versus I'm going to try to let them step in it and then jump ahead, right? So you're trying to gauge that by way of what number do I think is the right number to help me land in that sweet spot, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Did I rationalize that enough for that?
No,
The randomness
good
that
in-depth
occurs?
analysis of Kalimambo,
right.
the deep strategies.
Yeah.
It is funny that you can think that, but when you have 6 other people at the table that are just create so much chaos, and you have, I mean, because you can't read everybody's mind, right? So
Sure.
all of those things that happen is just
Especially a 7-year-old.
a 7-year-old, absolutely.
Well, I'm not trying to overly defend Kalimambo here. Just giving us something to talk about
Right.
before we get to final thoughts. I will say also, didn't you guys feel like you had more control with the higher numbered cards? Don't you think?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think so.
I mean, that's the most control you have.
Right.
Because, like, if you're playing an 11, you can fairly well guarantee that you're going to be able to control where you land up.
right. Because if somebody ties you, if you're in the front line, you're just going to stay where you are.
Right.
And if you don't get tied, then you know you're going to land in a safe location, right?
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is the game's not completely random. I think
Right.
there are some plays you can make and you can be like, I'm going to play this and I know I'm safe, right?
Unless somebody else plays that card.
But even if that happens, you're probably still safe, right?
Oh, if you're in the back of the line.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can almost guarantee it in certain circumstances, but as you do go lower down in numbers, you're introducing way more variables, right, that you just can't account for. So I think part of this game, too, is trying to figure out when can I play my low numbers, because I'm going to have to play them eventually, right, get them out of my hand, and then save those higher number cards for when I need to, like, avoid danger, basically, or not get
Right.
rammed by the Rhino that inevitably is coming, right?
Right.
I will say this game reminded me very strongly of Beastie Bar,
Yes.
which is actually another Zoch game that didn't get especially high marks from us, I don't think. It's simpler than Beastie Bar because you don't have like like in that game there were specific rules for each card, right?
Yep.
Like and each card behaved slightly differently.
Gave you the illusion of more control.
Right.
Right. But yeah, I got definitely got Beastie Bar vibes from this one.
For sure.
I bought that from Chris. Played it with the kids.
Was it a success?
No. No. Well, I mean, we laughed and had a good time, and because Chris wasn't playing, so we had fun. But
That's right.
other than that, yeah. No, this I will say, playing with Jason's kids and having the 7 people there was about the perfect way to play this game.
Yeah.
I think just because we were all there to have fun. The kids were there with the adults, and they were having fun, and so that to me is. If you're going to have an environment where you play this game, that is the environment. I mean, other than maybe a drinking game, or
Right,
something, but yeah, that was it.
100% agree with you. I'm glad we did it that way because I think at least for this review, it showed us what the game is meant for.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Your kids seem to enjoy it. I was worried they were going to get upset. 'Cause
No,
it could be
I'll
pretty
include that in
harsh
my
at
final
times.
review.
Okay.
When we get to that.
All right.
So
Okay. Well, do you all want to wrap it up?
yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
I can
Pretty
get-
straightforward game.
Yeah.
I can kick us off since I just mentioned it.
All right. Go for it.
So you might expect, based on what I said at the beginning, that I would give this game like a 2, right? I'm going to give it a 3, which is not a ton better, but let me explain why. So like when we played this with my kids, everybody was laughing and having fun, right?
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
lighthearted. It's fast. The rules are simple. Everybody can kind of grok what to do. If I was going to rate this purely for myself, I would probably give it a 2, right? Because I question if it's even a game. It's more of an activity where you're just playing cards and everybody laughs and sees what happens, right? As an activity, with the right audience. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned at the beginning that Zoch is focused mainly on children's games with high quality wooden pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is that. This is a
Totally.
children's game with high quality wooden pieces. If it wasn't mentioned, the poop pieces are wooden. And they're three-dimensional.
They look like the poop emoji,
Right.
Yeah.
minus the face. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, in that respect, I think that this game could hold up in the right environment with kids.
Yeah.
That said, all of my kids walked away from that and they were like, can we play a different game next time? Like,
That's funny.
so I think they enjoyed it for what it was, but I don't think it's a game that even they would want to play more often than we did. So that's why I give it a 3 and not anything higher than that
Yeah.
as a like general rating. So yeah, that's where I land.
Yeah, there's an interesting psychology in that because it clearly is geared toward families, but you have to question how good of a design choice it was if you're playing a game with young kids where you can lose up to 12 points at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's a negative reinforcement game.
right. You can just get brutally hit in this game, and young kids often don't deal with that super well.
And it's not even like a learning experience of like, well, you learned something. Don't play,
Yeah,
play
don't do
differently
that next time.
It's
Yeah.
like, no, you just got randomly whacked.
All right, so for me, as I played more games in my board gaming career, my gaming life, I've learned that there are just certain genres that I just don't like. Okay, cooperative games, generally speaking, would be one of those. Drafting games, actually, I am learning more and more that if drafting's like the sole mechanism, I just don't really care for games like that. And then simultaneous action selection, with some exceptions. There are some exceptions that I like, but for the most part, this whole idea of everybody pick a card, everybody turn it over, and then you're wincing like, oh, God, you know, like what's going to happen to me?
Did I read your mind or not?
Right. I don't know. I think for me, I just need a little bit more agency in my games. I think I totally agree with Jason. In the right crowd, I can 100% see how people would enjoy this, and people would be like, y'all are curmudgeons. It's just for fun. It's laughs, and we laughed when we were playing it, but I have to be realistic. I think this is one of those games where I would say, yeah, we laughed and had a good time, but I just wouldn't never want to go back to it, you know? It was fun that one time or a couple of times, and now I'm just kind of done with it, you know?
Right.
And I think that's where I am in this one. But if you like games like Beastie Bar, like Jason mentioned, Get Bit, this game is very similar to Get Bit, with a little bit more going on. Walk the Plank, games like that. Mm-hmm. This is a game that you would probably enjoy, but if you don't like games like that, you're not going to find it here.
Mm-hmm. Got a number?
Oh, shoot. Yeah. A 3.
Okay.
I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
It just is not for me.
Yeah. How about you? I mean, I agree with both of what you were going to say. I will say to everybody who's listening who probably already knows, I'm sitting with the two most likely people that you would never want to play Kalimambo with. Mr. No Random and Mr. No Fun.
Wait, which is which?
Depends on the day.
Right.
Yeah, I guess.
Exactly. And I'll just reiterate again, playing with Jason's kids was just the right way to play this game.
Yeah.
You do have to find the right setting for this to work. With all that said, with everything that both of you guys just mentioned, it just doesn't have legs, because even I don't want to do it. But I think you could make a fun drinking game out of it, right? You could, and if your kids, you know, if you're ready to transition your kids from Candyland, and if you have like the Captain Underpants kid, right, who might like the idea of dodging the poop, this game could be, you know, fun for them too.
It's hard to hate a game with poop in it.
That's right. It's truly. So I gave it a 3 too. 3 as well.
3s across the board. All right. Well, if this piqued your interest and you want to try it out, it's not very easy to find. I'm sorry. There are no copies available at Noble Night, our
Chris has one.
sponsors.
He's
I
probably
do have
willing to
one
sell.
for sale, though, for sure. Probably be adding it to the marketplace, I guess. There are also 4 copies on the BGG marketplace. But if you're at least in the States, you're probably going to be paying international shipping for that, because they are pretty much all in Europe.
I guess Chris will sell you a signed copy.
Signed copy, that's right. From the Hidden Gems crew. Yeah, it's a little hard to find, but, you know, it's a Spiel nominee. You never know, it might come back. Like I said, Get Bit is super popular, and this game is very similar to Get Bit, with maybe a little more going on, honestly. So, might come back one day.
Nice. Those are our thoughts on Kalimambo.
Kalimambo. Some like it hot. For taking a trick in Scharfe Schoten, you should sharpen your senses. It's not the amount of tricks that matters, but the fulfillment of your predictions. The backs of the cards tell you which spices your opponents want to mess up your menu with. If you guess correctly which tricks you will collect and which you can avoid, you score points. And if you're able to top off the menu perfectly with a hot seasoning, you can force your opponents to eat their hearts out at the end of the last course.
Wow. So whoever wrote that was good. To apply a theme to this game,
that was a
hysterical.
stretch.
That fills in some theme for me.
Scharfe Schoten.
Yeah, we should always read these themes before we play these games because I'm getting surprised here at the end.
I'm ashamed that I did not look this up beforehand, but do we know what Scharfe Schoten means?
Do not.
Oh, we got to figure it out.
Yeah, you don't know? That's your job.
I
You're
said I'm
teaching this
ashamed
game.
to say that I didn't look it up in advance.
I could look it up. You can explain the rules and
All
I'll
right,
look it up.
yeah, Bill, you look it up. All right. Scharfe Schoten. I'm assuming I'm saying that correctly. I'm assuming you researched that part.
I did not know.
Oh, great. Well, we might not even be pronouncing this correctly, folks, but that's okay, I guess. Bill's going to research all of that for us right now. Published in 2014 by, of course, Zoch Verlag. Designed by Arve de Fuller, and currently ranked on BGG 5,487. So pretty far up there.
Do you know other designs from Arve Fuller?
Couldn't say that I do.
El Gaucho.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Game that Jason and I like.
Yeah.
A newer release, Monasterium. It kind of got mixed
like
reviews.
real new.
Yeah, 2020.
Like on Kickstarter right now, right? I feel like there's a game called Monasterium on Kickstarter right now.
I think they're reprinting it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you're right. And then a 2-player game called Pagoda.
Okay. I've heard of that one.
Yeah. So he's got quite a few known designs.
All right. What do you got for
Here we
us,
go.
Bill?
What is it, Bill?
It is spicy peppers.
Spicy
peppers.
peppers.
Yeah.
Are we saying it right?
Spicy peppers? No, I don't know.
Scharfe Schoten.
Let's see.
Scharfe Schoten.
Oh, you were pretty close.
There you go.
That's pretty close. Scharfe Schoten. Okay.
All right.
Scharfe Schoten.
Perfect.
There we go.
Awesome.
Nailed it.
Well, Scharfe Schoten is a trick-taking game with some pretty interesting twists to it. So I'm going to do my best to explain this. It's not complicated, but it's tricky to explain this one in a way that's going to make sense to everybody. So before I dive too deep into what makes this game unique, I will qualify this by saying that it is a normal trick-taking game at its core. I feel like Chris always gives me the trick-taking games to teach, so I feel like I've done this spiel a million times. But for anybody out there who's not familiar with trick-taking, basically the lead player plays a single card. Other players in a round play a single card, following suit if they're able to, and playing a card from any other suit otherwise. So if you lead with spades, you have to follow spades unless you don't have spades, in which case you can play something else. The highest card of the led suit wins, unless a trump is played, in which case the highest trump wins. And the winner of a trick leads the next trick. That's basic trick-taking protocol. So, that said,
How do those trumps work, Jason?
Yeah. That said, this game flips a lot of that on its head. So we're going to get into that in a second. So the deck in Scharfe Schoten consists of 48 cards in 4 suits, with cards numbered between 1 and 12 in each suit. Before each hand, trumps and suit ordering are decided, though. So this is important. There is a single blank card of each suit color that gets laid in a line on the table. And then from a deck of cards, separate cards from the normal deck, numbered 1 through 12, we shuffle those and draw a random card to each of the colors of the suits. Once that happens, the combinations of numbers and colors get sorted in order from highest to lowest. And in essence, what this means is that the highest numbered suit is the highest ranked suit, and the lowest numbered suit is the lowest ranked suit.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it's an ordering of trumps, sort of.
Yes.
What that means is that if a player plays to a trick off suit because they do not have a card of the led suit, that player's card may trump the led card, but it might not. So for example, let's say red receives the highest number, making it the highest powered suit. Green receives the lowest number, so it's the lowest powered suit. And then it goes green, yellow, black, red. Green, yellow, black, red. So if yellow is led, the second highest, then if all players were to follow suit, So if all other players have a yellow card, then the highest yellow card wins, right? That's simple trick taking. However, if I play offsuit to that trick where yellow was led, and I play a green, I'm not going to win the trick because green is ranked lower than yellow. Even if I play the 12 of green, I'm not going to win. If I play a black card to that trick, then I will win that trick because black is higher than yellow unless someone else plays a higher black card than I played, or they play a red card because red is the highest.
Right.
If I play a red card, then only a higher red card is going to beat me. So you can see how this gets tricky, pun intended, in that you're constantly keeping track of which trumps out-trump other trumps. The other thing that this ordering determines is I said a number gets assigned. The number is not just for ordering the suits. It also determines the super trump in each suit.
Yeah.
So let's say the 3 gets played on top of the green card, right? Regardless of where it falls in the suit ordering, the 3 of green is now a super trump. And super trumps have to be played legally. You can't just play it randomly. You have to follow suit if you can. In order to play a super trump, you would have to be able to play off suit. But super trumps will always win a trick, regardless of color, unless a higher super trump is played, in which case the rank of the super trump comes into play. So hopefully I didn't just lose everybody in that, but that is really kind of the core of the card play of this game.
Yeah, very important.
So all that said, what are you actually trying to accomplish in this game? So before each hand, players are given a cardboard chit for each of the 4 suits, and players will receive their hand of cards and then assess which of the 4 suits they think they will take the most of, and which of the suits they think they will take the least of in terms of quantity of cards won in tricks. To help with that decision, the backs of all the cards are the color of their suit.
Yes.
So this is pretty unique.
Yep.
Not entirely unique to this game. There are other games that do this. Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde. Yeah.
Basically, by looking at the backs of the cards of other players, you don't know what cards they're holding, but you know how many cards of each suit they're holding.
Yep.
So that helps you assess your bidding strength.
Absolutely.
Also, not all of the cards are dealt each hand. So the leftover cards form the face-down reserve, or the spice cabinet, where all players can see how many cards of each color are left out of the hand. So once all players have revealed their bids, and this is done simultaneously, you hide your bids in your hand, and then everybody reveals them. And remember, you're revealing the suit that you think you will take the most cards of, and the suit that you think you will take the least cards of. After that, card play starts, as I described before. When a trick is won, all cards from that trick are laid out by suit in front of the player who won them. And also, the player must, if there are still cards available in the spice cabinet, they must choose one face-down card from the spice cabinet and add it to their tableau of cards that's in front of them.
Yep.
That can sometimes be a benefit, sometimes not be a benefit. So once all the tricks are played for a hand, then we assess scoring. So the way this works, if a player's bet for the suit that they thought they would take the most of was correct, in that there was no ties, they receive 5 points. If their bid suit was tied for the most, like you got 5 cards of your highest suit that you bid for, but you also got 5 cards of another suit, you receive only 3 points.
Right.
The same applies for the low suit bid, 5 for guessing correctly, 3 when you tie. And then in addition to that, if you manage to get both of your bids, whether they were tied or not, then you additionally receive points equal to the difference between your high bid and your low bid.
Right.
In terms of like the number of cards you took.
Yep.
Then after a hand is scored, the lead for the next hand passes clockwise around the table, and play continues until all players have started a hand with the lead. Highest number of points wins.
Nice.
Whew. Okay.
There's a lot of. It's kind of funny. It's not as complicated as it sounds, because when you play it, you know how, but it takes a long time to absorb this game. But,
sure.
Yeah. But,
Yeah, it's a weird one. We've played a lot of weird trick-taking games on this show, and this is up there.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a lot of things that are unique about this game. I think one that's easy to pull out to just get us started talking is the fact that you can see the backs of other players' cards, and you can use that information to your advantage, or not if you were as confused as I was for most of the times we play this game. So what did you guys think about that? Did you think it was helpful, not helpful? Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. Or did you want to go? Sorry.
Either way.
Okay. I was going to say I love this aspect of the game. I think it's the key aspect of this game, honestly, is being able to see how many of each color of card your opponents are holding in your hand. Right. It certainly dictates your initial bid, and it will dictate how you play for the remainder, really. I mean, it's just critically important. I think it would be worth stating again just to illustrate this point, because I know Jason did an excellent job in the rules, but I think I kind of have an example that might help clarify things even a little bit more. Okay. So let's say that black is the lowest suit, okay, the weakest suit.
Right.
And I'm holding the 12, the 11, and the 10 of black, okay?
Right.
And 12 is the highest card, right? In most trick-taking games, that's like 3 winners, right?
Yeah.
Now let's say that Jason has 5 black cards in his hand, but Bill only has 1 black card in his hand.
Right.
And again, black is the lowest suit. Well, what does that mean? Well, what that means is, and you may not get this because you haven't played it, but what it means is that at most, I'm catching 1 hand of black. And in fact, I might be catching none.
Right.
If I don't have the super trump in black.
Exactly.
And so it takes trick-taking convention of thinking, okay, I have the 3 highest card in the suit. I'm going to win those 3. And you could not win any of them. Right? And so that emphasizes the importance of looking at the cards that your opponents are holding.
Yep.
And then realizing that the cards that I think are valuable and strong maybe aren't as strong as I think based on the distribution of cards that my opponents are holding.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just fascinating the way that works.
And in addition to that, the other fascinating aspect is, well, you might be thinking, oh, well, okay, well, if red is the highest ranked suit and I have the 12, 11, and 10 of red, I'm sitting pretty, right? Because I know that I can win because it's the highest ranked suit and I have the highest cards. Problem is you have to bid. And because of the way this game works, that means you're going to win a lot of stuff you don't necessarily want to win.
Yep.
And that makes it that much more unpredictable as to what other players are going to end up throwing into those tricks that you win.
Right.
And so while you know that you can win a lot of stuff, you don't know what you're going to win. And so it makes the bidding harder. And so it's like opposite ends of the spectrum. It's almost better to know what you're not going to win than it is to know what you're going to win, because you don't know what other cards are going to end up in those tricks that you win, unless you have the lead at the time and you know that other people are on suit and they're going to have to throw in with you. So
Right. Then you lay the super trumps on top of that.
Yeah.
Because if you had the 12, 11, 10, it's conceivable that you don't even get those, even if they're the highest trumps.
Exactly.
Right. If depending on this distribution. But yeah, with you, Chris. I love that part of the game, kind of discerning, what am I going to get? What am I not going to get? I think several of us fell in this trap thinking that we were going to have high cards in any one of the suits, thinking this is what I'm going to bid as the thing I'm going to make the most of, when really you have to think about what you're going to trump into and going to be able to take the most of. And so often you're thinking about, what do I have the shortest suit of that I really don't have that card in my hand at all.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to pick up from what other people are. It turns a lot of things upside down in the trick-taking game mentality of how do you approach the table.
Yeah, it's not to say that the absolute values of the cards don't matter, because they do at times, but at other times they may not matter. And it may be much more important to assess the distribution of what colors of cards your opponents are holding in their hands,
Absolutely.
right? And so describing all this, you might be thinking to yourself, this sounds impossible. Like, how do you predict?
I agree.
You're telling me that 12 and 11, a 10 of a suit may not win any tricks?
Right.
How do you predict? And granted, that is hard, but I think if you're looking at the back of the cards, you may be able to determine, I just shouldn't pick that suit as the one I'm going to catch the most in, even though I have really valuable cards in that, right? You'll learn that, but the way I think the game softens the blow, and it's really clever, a lot of trick-taking games with bidding determine you to be very precise. Like, I'm going to catch X number of tricks exactly, right? Whereas this one is just telling you, hey, just predict which one you think you're going to catch the most of and which one you think you're going to catch the least of. I'm not asking you to predict how many cards or how many tricks. You just have to get the most and the least.
Right.
Which also sounds like it would be easier, and it is, but it's still hard enough to make the game challenging without making it impossible, if that makes sense, right?
It also softens it with the spice cabinet aspect.
Totally, yeah.
I was gonna mention.
Depending on what you're going for, right? Because you have this extra tableau of cards that you can choose from to influence your ratio of cards that you've taken. Now, sometimes that can be a negative if there's only cards out there that you really don't want,
Right.
because you're forced to take one. But it can enable you to manipulate your tableau slightly here and there, even if you're not catching the cards exactly the way you want them.
To explain again what that is, when you deal out the cards, there's a random set of cards that you set to the side that are not in anybody's hands, which
Yep.
also affects your calculus when you're saying,
Yeah.
is there a super trump out
The
there or
super
not?
trumps might not be in the hand.
It could be in a quote unquote spice rack. But whenever you take a trick, you draw a card from that side, which can be a double-edged sword, but it's often, when you're trying to get the least or the most of the time you're probably pulling the guy that's going to be your most. However, there are instances where you need to get some of the ones in the middle so you don't end up being tied.
Yes.
Right. It's like, well, but then if I take this card and I catch another trick with a card in it, then that's
Right.
going to screw me up. Like,
Yeah. Am I going to catch too many of that? Yeah.
Exactly. So it's an awesome point of tension for sure.
Totally agree. That calculus I often found myself thinking, do I just take another one of the one I need the most? But getting that difference, that point difference that Jason mentioned, the rules again will reiterate. If you get your most and your least right, then you get the difference between the most number of cards you caught and the least, which is a lot of points. You want that difference, right? And so sometimes taking a card from the spice cabinet to give yourself a little bit of a buffer from your least number, right?
Yeah.
Can save you, because another thing players can do in this game, and it's a fun, interesting aspect of the game, is you can see what everybody's bid, right? So I know that Bill doesn't want to catch red.
Yeah.
Well, let's say I have a suit where I can throw a red in and it won't catch. It's like a lower card, and I know Bill doesn't want it. I can toss that in there on him, right? And now I'm hindering him from making one of his bids, right?
Yep.
Another interesting aspect of strategy, but I will mention quickly, you can't do that indiscriminately, because you do have to consider how you're going to play all your cards out to where you don't screw yourself too. So I guess the point I'm making is you can mess people over like that, but you can't just do it willy-nilly, or you might end up screwing yourself up too, right? So you have to think carefully about when you do that, right?
Anything you didn't like about this game or thought was kind of unusual?
I'll say it took me a very long time to grok how to assess a hand in this game. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't consider myself to be an especially good trick taker. So
I disagree.
I mean, I've learned because we've played a lot of games here, but I don't consider myself to be like a, savant at trick taking games. It took me a really, really long time to even get close to thinking that I might understand how to assess a hand in this game. Bidding is just very confusing because you're looking at your hand and you're like, okay, I don't know, maybe I just got some really hard hands. There were a few where I got like no cards of the lowest suit except for the super trump, where I had like 2 super trumps, but they were like the 2 lowest super trumps, and then everything else I had was like the highest suit possible or something like that. Just like you can get a weird distribution that's just like, what the heck do I do with this? But maybe that's part of the fun of it, right? It's like trying to sort through these weird situations that you can get yourself into, because there are so many variables that swing things back and forth of like, well, man, like what the heck am I going to do with this? The other thing that I would say is I think that you guys are going to laugh at me. I did detect some randomness in this, in the sense that you can make a really good prediction based on what's in your hand that can go one direction or the other simply based on what other players lead with.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
That's called card playing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but like, I don't know. It felt a little less in control in this one. It's like, well, like this could be a really good hand for me if Chris just leads a yellow. Like if Chris leads a yellow, then like I'm solid and I can get this and everything's going to work out fine. If that doesn't happen, I might be screwed and might not like win anything. So I did detect a little bit of that, but that could just also just be me not understanding how to play the game well. But those are really kind of minor negatives overall.
The only thing I can think of is and I don't really necessarily call this a negative, but you can end up in a situation where you're just not going to win. Like in round 2 or round 3, you could be way behind.
Just being out of it, you mean?
Yeah, just kind of being out of it. And that can feel bad, but I mean, part of it is you just didn't play well.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's part of the game. So I'm 50-50 about that, but that's the only thing that came to mind for me.
I will say, I mean, any given hand, you can score a good amount. I mean, you can score 15, 17,
Yes,
true.
18 points.
But if somebody else at the table has done that twice in a row and they already have like 30, the most you're going to get is 15 probably.
Yeah, it can be hard to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that we all kind of have like these vague cons. I mean, I guess if I'm going to mention one too, it's kind of in a very similar vein as you all. I don't necessarily consider this much of a con, but I will say having super trumps in your hand feels good most of the time. Now,
Right.
sure, you can have a weird distribution where you might not want them, but it's kind of nice in this game to know that you have like almost a guaranteed winner.
Right.
Just to base all of your other calculus on for your predictions. Like I had a few hands where I didn't have super trumps at all last time we played, and I just felt like I was struggling. But again, I don't necessarily consider that a con because that's card games. You're not going to have the bird every hand. You know, just figure it out. You know, like don't be a baby about
super
it.
trumps can be a liability. Like I just said, if all you have is a super trump in like the lowest suit, like you're trying to figure out, okay, what the heck do I do with this thing? Because I know I'm going to win something with it.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I'm going to win. And then I have to figure out what to do with it after that. Like, but that, again, that adds to that mystery of whichever.
Yeah, figure it out. Yeah. I'd rather have them than not. But I agree with you. All that to say, I feel like you can't, quote unquote, figure this game out. And I think that's like a good thing. You know, like a lot of card games, you kind of figure them out and you always know what to play. You know, we always praise Teach You, which this isn't like Teach You at all, but Teach You has that same feeling of every hand feels like a new puzzle to solve. I felt like in this game, every time I got a new hand, it was a new puzzle to solve.
Right.
Never felt sure. I was always trying to figure out how it would work out, looking at the backs of y'all's hands and my cards and like, how is this going to play out? And just trying to figure it out, you know?
I 100% agree. Ready for final?
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Kick us off, Chris.
All right. So as I mentioned, this game takes standard trick-taking conventions and really turns it on its head, like most good trick takers do and should do. They should be quite a bit different. And this one really does. Like I said, it can take what in most trick-taking games would be considered strong cards and winners and trick you into thinking you have a good hand or a good chance of catching in that, and then you not do well in that at all.
Right.
And you have to figure that out, right? Figuring that puzzle out. Again, that doesn't mean it's impossible. You just have to change your way of thinking about standard trick-taking, which again is a good thing. I feel like the last time a trick taker really grabbed me like this was Ghost of Christmas, where it felt so different, so opaque, so unique, and trying to just figure it out.
Right.
And so because of that, I think this game is excellent. I thought Ghost of Christmas was excellent. I think this one's excellent. I really like this one. Definitely want to explore it further because it's just fascinating to me. So I'm going to give this game a 5. I think this game is way above average. It's really good.
Yeah. Cool. I also really like the evolving understanding of just like how to play this game because we played it, I don't know, maybe 10 times. I mean, but it took 2 or 3 of them just for me to kind of understand how the interactions of all these trumps really played out.
Yeah.
And then the layered of the super trump on top of it and then drawing the extra cards and how do you not end up in the tie. So you really have to take cards that you don't really think about the fact that you need to take. There's just a great kind of slow dawning of the genius of the design of all this with the hidden cards and stuff like that. I will say that this really isn't necessarily for the faint of heart of people who are going to judge right away on trick-taking games because it really takes some effort.
This is not a good entry to the genre.
Right.
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
It's definitely not.
You need that group of people who are going to be willing to play this at least 5 or 6 times to just say, oh, yeah, this is the way this works. It's funny. I think back to my family when I did bring them Jekyll and Hyde we got to the end of it. One of them said, well, we could have just played spades. And it just rings in my ears. I was like, oh, my God. And part of me died that moment. But, to me, this lives in the Jekyll and Hyde world in how cool it is. And it is another one where you see the suit on the back of the card kind of thing. And to me, having that information, like Chris says, when you're deciding at the very beginning something that is so important about how you play for the rest of it, is just so cool because it's like, okay, you actually kind of play out the whole hand in your head before you start the game.
Yes.
And so that part of
Well, some of us do.
Right, but this one encourages that for those of us who are willing to spend that time. And somebody else said on our BGG Guild channel that I'd never given a 6, and I never realized that I'd never given a 6. I'm not going to give this one a 6. I'm going to give it a 5 point.
You're such a tease.
I know it. I'm going to give this a 5.5 just because I think it is so good. But it is. Yeah, this is just an amazing game.
Yeah.
So
It still remains a mystery what qualifies as a 6 for Bill.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, but to me, the other part of this is I feel like the only people that I would ever play this game with are in this room.
Right.
So that's the hard part.
It's interesting you mention your family and spades. I'll just mention really quickly. I think, again, card taking, it's different for different people because, like I mentioned earlier in the review, some people just like the familiarity of, okay, I've seen this distribution of cards before. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
This is what I'm supposed to do now. I know what I'm supposed to play next. And everybody would know if you misplayed. Mm-hmm. And this game is just the complete opposite of that.
Right.
You never quite feel sure. You're just kind of muddying through it, and I can see how some people wouldn't enjoy that,
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess that leaves me. So I think I made it clear that this game confused me. Despite that, I enjoyed the puzzle of figuring it out. Like Bill and Chris have said, this is one that you will need to take time to learn. And so I think that's my primary caveat is that, like we've said, this is not an entry-level trick-taking game. Mm-hmm. This is advanced trick-taking. That said, if that's your thing, this is a fantastic game. I had originally written down 4. I think I'm going to give it a 5 too, because this is one of the better trick-taking games we've played in a while, despite it being very confusing to me. I don't think I have a ton more to add than what you guys have already said, so I'll leave it at that. But
nice.
I will add that Ken said multiple times that this is way better than Slough Off. So.
He did.
I like Slough Off too, but
I think he just likes saying Slough Off. Slough Off, Slough Off, way better than Slough Off.
I agree with Ken on that. By the way, this game is definitely better than Slough Off. All right, this is the part of our job that I hate.
Great business model, Chris.
I know, and it doesn't happen all the time, but every now and again, the three of us rave about a game, and it's just impossible to get. And that is this one, unfortunately. And that feels like that's pretty new because I feel like a couple years ago it wasn't that hard to get. But there are no copies at Noble Knight, and there's one copy on BGG, and it's $65.
Wow.
So I don't think you want to pay $65 for a deck of cards. I just have to hope that one day this gets reprinted. It's worthy, especially given how hot trick takers are right now. They're just like in vogue. You know what I mean?
I mean, granted, it is a trick-taking game, so it can't be that hard to recreate this with a normal deck of cards somehow. But
the card backs would be, that'd be tricky. You could maybe sleeve them or something.
Yeah,
but
never mind.
Yeah, it sucks because it's such a good one, and hopefully it'll come back one day. And if you ever can find it in the wild, I definitely recommend picking it up. But not easy to get. Womp womp. All right, those are our thoughts on Scharfe Schoten.
This can't be true. My stubborn Uncle Ian wants to cover the entire castle with his rust-colored brick towers, even though everybody knows that my light granite slabs are much more reasonably priced and prettier.
That's complete nonsense, Aiden. My limestone towers top everything. Therefore, they should also tower above everything, especially over Cousin Lachlan's disgusting clumps of sand.
You call yourself a man, whiny-eyed over a bunch of ninja turtles. It'll cost you dearly if you're spreading yourself over my towers.
I don't care. After all, the revenue from our estates is divided according to the shares in our family residence. And what matters is who is on top.
You Donatella lover, what's wrong with you, lad? Very well, then. You asked for it.
Well done, Bill.
Nice.
Little improv comedy from Bill there.
That was the actual flavor text.
Yes, it was. You'll see that
Believe it or
printed
not.
in the box.
Oh, man, I hope we didn't cross the line that time. Okay, Kilt Castle. Published in 2016 by Zoch Verlag. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 7,835. Everything above 5,000 this time.
Wow.
Even Scharfe Schoten was in the 5,000s. Can you believe that?
I think that's because people probably don't play it.
Yeah, probably. Designer, wait for it, Gunther Burkhardt.
Yep.
Not a stranger to the Hidden Gems podcast, that's for dang sure. So, games of his we've reviewed, Scharfe Castle Company, which we loved,
Yep.
Potato Man, which we hated, Sealand, which we were just meh on, also Ulm, Darjeeling, and then Casa Grande, which almost broke us up completely.
No more podcast.
I will say this game has very strong vibes of Casa Grande.
Totally does.
Break you up.
Yeah. This game was actually recommended by one of our guild members. Got to give it up to Salatu. Thank you, Salatu, for giving us the recommendation to try out Kilt Castle. All right, now it's my turn to do one of the weird ones. It's a little bit odd. All right, brief rule summary for Kilt Castle. Kilt Castle is an area control game of sorts where the players are constructing castles via the placement of castle floors onto a shared game board. The game board is a 5x5 square board, and around the edge of the board are placed 3 or 4, depending on player count, groups of building cards. These building cards come in 2 varieties, single color and double color, and these colors match the colors of the player's pieces. So to explain what I mean by that just a little bit more, the blue building card, it's just a single color blue, allows the blue player to take a turn, basically. Whereas if you played a building card that had blue and orange on it, and I was blue and Bill was playing the orange pieces, if somebody moved that card, Bill and I would get to take a turn. Mm-hmm. Okay? Each player will receive 16 castle floors of their color. 2 of these floors will have 2 family crests pictured on its top, and then 3 of these floors will have 1 family crest pictured on its top. More on that later. On a player's turn, they have one choice. It's really pretty straightforward. They must choose one building card present around the edge of the board and relocate that card to a new location around the edge of the board in a clockwise direction. The new row that the card lands in, or where the card is relocated to, will determine where new castle floors can be built, and again, it will determine who can build a castle floor, again, depending on the colors that are printed on that card. So what I mean by when I say where is, again, this is a 5x5 gridded board, and when you move this card around the periphery of the board and you slot it into a row, there should be 5 spots that your tower floor can theoretically go in.
The column or row that the card landed in.
Right, exactly.
Also, you don't have to move your own card.
No, you do not. Yeah, we'll get to that, very importantly. Some more rules involving moving a building card include, again, the cards must always move clockwise. You can never move a card further than 1 space past the already most advanced card or cards. No card row may contain more than 4 cards, so this may not have been clear. You can have more than 1 card in a row when you relocate it. There could be 1 or 2 cards there already. You just can't exceed 4 cards in a certain slot in a given row or column, basically. And then finally, there may never be more than 5 individual card rows. That's in a 4-player game. So if there are 5 card rows and I take a card and put it in the slot to make a 6th group of cards, that would be illegal in a 4-player game. Once the building card has been relocated, players associated with that card, again, if their colors are on that card, will build a castle tower. Players can either build in the first open square space for free, or they can choose to overbuild any existing tower in the row, including their own. If a player chooses to overbuild on an opponent's castle floor, you must pay whoever is on top of the current tower a number of coins equal to the current height of said tower. So there are a couple of points here that should be reiterated, and I haven't explained this. Money in this game is points, okay? So if you're paying to overbuild on top of somebody, you are paying them money, but that's your points, okay? So if Bill was on top of a tower that was 3 high, and I built on top of Bill, I would have to pay Bill 3 coins. It doesn't matter who's below the person who's on top. It only matters who's on the top at the time they're covered. So since money is points, how do you make money or score points in this game? Well, anytime you or anyone else at the table moves a building card and it is the last card in that row, so basically that card's movement creates an empty row, it triggers something known as a ducat day or a payday. At this point, once the active player or players have built their castle floor, each player will look at the central board and count how many connected towers of their color they can see looking at the board from a top-down view. And then they will score a number of coins equal to the size of their largest connected group. So what I mean by that is if I'm looking down at the board from overhead and 4 of my towers are on top and they're connected or they're sharing a side orthogonally, or not diagonally, but orthogonally adjacent, I would score 4 coins for that. Again, you just consider the largest connected group looking from the top with your tower being on top, okay? And then one more thing about the paydays. If you'll remember early in the rules, I mentioned the crests. So if your tower that's on top has crests pictured on it, 1 or 2, you'll get an additional number of coins equal to the number of crests that you see showing on top of those towers. The game will continue on in this way until one player has no more castle floors remaining to place. At this point, players will score 1 point for each castle, tower, and family crest seen on the board, and that's on the entire board, not just your largest group. This is at the very end of the game. And then the player with the most money at this point wins the game. It's generally how you play Kilt Castle.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you.
Guitar lover, you.
All right. So I think the most probably unique feature about this game is this card movement, right? So in determining who basically gets to take a build action or a turn on your given turn is determined by what card you move. And as Jason mentioned in the rules, you can even move a card that your color's not on, and you're allowing other people to build on your turn. And there may be times where it makes sense for you to do that. But it is unique in that this cards are kind of moving clockwise around the board, and you're trying to plan which card do I need to move to build where I want to build, or let other people build where I want them to build, et cetera, et cetera. So how'd you all feel about this kind of unusual and unique mechanism?
I thought it was fascinating. One other component of that card is if it has 2 colors, it rotates so that there's one person who goes first and another person goes second.
Yep.
And as the game develops, that becomes so important about who's going first and who's going next as far as who gets the last say on where something's going down. It's kind of the crux of this game is how do you manage what card you're grabbing, where it's going, and even managing things like when are you going to trigger a score?
Yeah.
And how do you manipulate that card movement so you're the guy who does it, who does the scoring when you want it to happen, kind of thing. So, yeah, I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what we started to learn in later games of this was that there's a lot of trickiness to this.
Yeah.
Because your first layer of learning the strategy of this game is like, ooh, man, if I hang back and I use my own cards, I can control when a scoring happens. And I can make sure that I get to do something in the right spot at the right time and know that I'm going to score immediately after that. But if other players catch on to that, they'll be like, well, I'm not going to let you do that. I'm going to move your card for you. And I'm going to put it somewhere. I'm going to put it someplace where you don't want it to be. Right?
In the front of the line.
Right. Yeah. If your card gets moved up to the front of the line, you become very limited in what you can do with it because you can't move it beyond the front of the line. So you're sitting there waiting until all the other cards catch up to be able to do something with your card again. So, yeah, it just added a lot of different layers of meanness.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, to be honest, like, there's a lot of meanness in this game. But a lot of different angles for strategy, I guess.
For sure. I totally agree. It can be very upsetting when you think I'm just going to hang my card back and just keep moving it forward in my turn and placing towers, and somebody can just upend you by moving your card to the front of the line. It lets you take a turn, which is nice, but it can really mess up your plans. I think another thing that's really clever about this card movement, whether you're moving yourself or somebody else, usually somebody else, other people, and I think Jason caught on to this faster than anybody, is that, and this is hard to explain, I'll explain it in the best way I can, but just in generally speaking, these cards, as they move around the board, they kind of move in like a wave-like fashion. They're moving as a group in a wave, basically, is the way that I think of it. And once the cards go past a certain point, there are certain rows or towers that won't be messed with again for a while, right? And so if you can move the cards ahead in such a way that you can ensure that somebody can't build on top of you for a while, you can really capitalize on that, right? So I think there's some strategies in protecting your towers and moving people to the front just so they don't cover you up, basically. I thought it was kind of clever.
I'm watching Chris gesticulate wildly over here. That was made is what he was saying much clearer. So I'm sorry you're
You
not
can see my wave motions.
Exactly, your wave motions. I totally get that. It's funny the levels of understanding you get with this game. That one thing that I didn't quite get was that I probably didn't want to move my card closer to the front of the line,
right,
because when it stays to the back of the line, it kind of forces other people to pick your card again, so you get more pieces down earlier, kind of thing. So this is another one of those games where it's just a slow dawning of, oh, this is how you play this game to win, kind of thing.
What did you guys think about when to play the towers with the bonuses? I thought this was kind of interesting because, again, there are 5 towers that have crests or seals on them, and when they're uncovered, if they're part of a scoring, you're scoring more points, right? And you're just looking for those. This is a game of subtlety where you're just looking to barely get ahead of your opponents every payday.
Right.
But the thing about the crest is you do that, you'll score more points, but you're kind of putting a target on yourself, right? Because now people are like incentivized to stop you, right? Because you're getting ahead and they can like break up your groupings, right? So there's a little bit of a push-pull there. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I found that interesting too. And again, it's another learning experience type thing. Because after one of our games, it was like, I didn't even get some of mine down. It's like, why did that not happen? It's because I was like waiting for these better opportunities or trying to get them like super high up on the tower. Because like, well, nobody's going to build over me if I have it at like level 6 or level 7. But it takes so long to get them there. It's like by the time you do that, you're not really benefiting from them that much. I mean, granted, they might count as end game points, but it almost becomes more advantageous even to lose like a double crest if you know you can get it down right before a scoring.
Right.
Maybe you'll only score it once, but at least you got that extra 2 coin bump out of it.
It's not sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah. I mean, the other aspect is like if you can get it down in one of those spots where you know that the laser beam of cards is not going to be focused on that. I think of it as a laser beam, Chris. It hits like certain quadrants of the board. If you know that the focus is going to be off of a certain area of the board and you can get one of those down in that spot, then you know you're kind of sitting pretty for a while.
Right. Yeah.
That makes total sense. What was funny to me was to see other people's strategies on getting them down early. Like you were saying, Jason, I was kind of the one who was banking mine and holding them back, thinking, okay, let me make it more expensive for somebody else to cover up my symbols. But I know some people were putting them in really early in the game where it was only going to cost 1 or 2 to take them out. And it was like, what the heck are you doing that for? But they probably scored it a couple times.
Exactly.
So, which was kind of wild.
I feel like the more we played it, the earlier and earlier people were doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what about this game maybe stood out to you as something you didn't like quite as much?
The not liking part sometimes I think casts a funky shadow on like what I'm about ready to say, because I don't think it's necessarily a dislike. I think it's like, what is something you have to consider when you play this game?
Sure.
But one of the things I think happens in this game is that there's a real strong awareness of who's in the lead.
Yes.
And so there's a real effort by other people at the table to pull that person back, because it's obvious when you look at the board who has the biggest scoring when a scoring things happen. And so that is the goal of everybody else at the table, to break up that scoring mechanism. I don't know. It's just a very interesting dynamic in this game.
I would call it a con. I agree with you. I get what you're saying totally. So there's one thing about this game. Everybody knows I'm no stranger to mean games, and I don't shy away from them. But the thing about this game that's a little bit weird, and maybe it's because I'm salty because it did happen to me one time. I think it was happening to everybody. But the most recent time we played, I had a good little nexus going. And that doesn't mean that people shouldn't attack me. They should. But the thing that's, I want to say weird. Maybe I should say interesting. But the thing that's a little weird about how this game works is, you know, in most games, let's say we're playing a 4-player game and people perceive that I'm ahead. Bill and Jason and Ken can take a turn to really hinder me, right? And that can hurt, but I can try to recover from that. In this game, because there are 2 colors on a card,
Right.
theoretically, 6 turns could occur before it's my turn. Like, if everybody decides, okay, we're not going to move any cards that have Chris's color on it. So, okay, Bill's going to move the card with Bill and Ken on it, and then Ken's going to move the card that's got Ken and Jason on it, and then Jason's going to move the cards that got Jason and Bill's color on it. You can just get absolutely obliterated by the time it comes back to your turn.
Yeah.
Killed.
Right.
Because of the way that your opponents can control you not getting to go, and them getting to go sometimes twice before you get to go.
Right.
That can really hurt. A lot. So that's something to be aware of.
Yeah, in that vein, it did feel like in some of the games that there is just this imbalance of how many turns different players get.
Right.
Right? Like I found one game where Ken was ending the game running out of towers, and I still had like 5 or 6 towers left, right? And I don't think that was even necessarily an intentional thing on anybody's part. It's just the way the cards fell. People were moving other people's cards with their symbol on it. I can always ensure that I move a card that has my symbol on it when it's my turn, right? But there's not really an incentivization thing in this game where, you might end up as like the last card in a row and somebody's going to move it because there's a scoring opportunity there.
Sure.
But like that's not something that you control. So it can just end up in these situations where you're just not getting as many turns as other players just because of the way the cards are being moved around the board. And that feels a little strange to me.
So there's a design issue that I think comes into play with that, because one way that you can influence that is when you move your card to not move it to the front of the pack, or just always keep it towards
But people
the back.
might move you to the front of the pack.
That's true. They might. But in general, if you stay towards the back, your card will be moved more because that's the choice that you have left, right? Because if you're going to move them forward. We talked about our groupthink, I guess, and our strategies on how we do this, that we moved fairly slowly around the board, that we could have moved more quickly around. And I don't know if I can explain this very well, but the board's this square. And if you're looking at north, south, east, and west,
We have waves and laser beams. How do you think
Right.
that'll-
Satellite
and if
radars.
you're starting on the south side of the board, there's a southwest corner that
Southeast.
I guess southeast corner.
Yeah.
That's just not going to get touched. And Jason figured this out pretty quickly that you could put your 2 there and score it kind of all game long as you're moving to the west and then north and then east around the outside of the rest of the board. That was really effective. As far as the strategies are concerned, I can see that being a strategy that everybody should think about from now on when you play it.
This is interesting. So you just said that's a strategy that everybody should consider before the game starts. So does that mean you think that's a dominant strategy? I think us knowing what we know about the game now, having played it a few times, we would be fighting over that spot like cats and dogs, right?
Yeah, I don't think I would get away with that again.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, true, but I mean, they all come at a cost, right?
Sure.
So as that building builds, so it becomes more interesting, and we just know how the game plays, and it's just an awareness thing. And it's like, okay, what point is the tipping point where that's no longer?
But whoever ends up with it is kind of at an advantage, wouldn't you say?
I mean,
If they have their 2 on top of it.
did they pay 5 for it, or did they pay 3
See,
for
here's
it?
the thing. So I want to talk about that. Okay, so you just said, did they pay 5 for it? So let's say that Jason was on top of a 3 tower, and you cover Jason up. You have to pay Jason 3 coins. And then Jason, later on his turn, covers you right back up.
Right.
On top of a 4 tower. Well, you could say, well, Jason had to pay 4.
Yeah, it's a delta of
But
1.
he only played 1.
Right. I
Right?
get
So
it.
he's really not paying that much, right? He's paying 1 more to get back on top.
Unless you do.
Well, sure, but you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like in this game we were saying, like, oh, you can't give him 5 or you can't give him 6, but really, like you said, the delta is usually kind of small. It's not really 6, right? It's like 2.
No, I get that because
Somebody paid him 4 to cover him up earlier. Now he's paying 6 to go back on top, kind of a thing.
Right.
It's like this weird tit for tat thing
yeah.
that I'm not sure I love, honestly, if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I got that 2 down early. I don't think I built over anybody who was higher than 2 or 3 the whole game, right? Y'all were all building over each other at like 6 and 7,
Maximum carnage.
passing stuff back and forth. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
No, I mean, I do think that's a place to think about strategy.
Sure.
Because you're right. Because you could go somewhere else considerably, or maybe even put 2 or 3 more buildings down.
Instead of just fighting over that spot, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trading that one back and forth.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily saying I think it's dominant. It just makes me wonder. And maybe we need to look at it more. So
Yeah.
To be fair, I'm not sure this alleviates the problem entirely, but that bottom corner of the board, some of the spaces are blocked off.
Right.
And that's what kind of tipped me off to it, because I was like, it's kind of weird that the first time we played, I was like, everything's on this side of the board. And that's weird. Why is that? And I was like, oh, well, it's because you can only access that side of the board.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, interesting that they covered over these spaces. That probably is because you
They're
can only access
unreachable.
that side of the board at a very specific time in the game. So what if I get something down there in that window and then make sure that nobody else can get to it?
Yeah.
And it worked that one time. It probably would never work again.
You beat us pretty soundly.
Absolutely. It was a great strategy. Would it work again?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
probably not.
We ready to go to final thoughts time?
Sure.
All right, Bill, you're first.
Dang it. I hate that I was first on this one.
We're not going to let you
Scottish
change
accent.
your mind based on what we say.
Oh, no. So this is a game that's a lot of negotiated, take this and that. And as
Yeah.
a group in this room, I don't think we're necessarily, we're not necessarily good at that, I think, sometimes. And it's a success when nobody is left bleeding
Reference
on
last
the table.
episode.
Bill was getting Attica vibes.
Right, exactly. But this time, everybody was in better spirits, so that was all really good. No flesh wounds or anything.
Nobody called the cops.
Right, and there was not a scar left. But this game is also one that if you make a bonehead move like I did, and for instance, this is a card with Jason where I played first and he played second, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do this, and this is a quote-unquote nice thing I'm doing for Jason to let him play this turn with me. Well, I play mine, and there's an obvious smarter move where he can like break up my castles by playing his move, and he does, and it's a
It's like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't you? But for me, it's like this forehead slapping moment. It's like, yes, why wouldn't he? But then for the rest of the game, it's like, okay, I'm like gonna get Jason for the rest of my. I'm gonna gut him all the way through, and it's it's that kind of feeling as part of this game because like, dude, I was just trying to do you a freaking favor, and that's the way it turns out. This is the kind of game that is.
Do we need to discuss our differences this episode like Chris and I did last episode?
No, I'm good
work
with
it
it.
out.
No, I'm good with it, and it was the right thing for you to do, and it was me just being dumb. But I don't know. I have some mixed emotions about this game because I appreciate the design and the fact that I think it's kind of cool, and I like the way the cards flip. I think there were some angsty moments. The ebb and flow of the power and pulling back the leader part of it was just kind of a wild swing that I'm not sure I necessarily care for, but I'm going to settle on a 3, I think. And it might be part of the fact that our game group doesn't do that well.
Yeah.
Might be part of that, but
There were many audible groans to be had while we played this game.
exactly. So anyway, I enjoyed playing it. I would play it again, but it was not at the top of my list.
Yeah. I think I kind of agree with you, Bill, to be honest. This one, I had high hopes for because it did remind me a lot of Casa Grande. Maybe like a meaner, more strategic Casa Grande, right? You have the same moving around the outside of the board, trying to line up your rows and columns to get stuff out there. But the meanness came through in this one a lot more. And
that's saying something because Casa Grande, good heavens.
see, I didn't feel like Casa Grande was that mean, to be honest. But
Jeez.
It's just Chris.
It must be just me. I don't know.
Chris threw his hat on
Dude,
that
I was so butthurt after playing that game.
yeah. So I think some of the reservations that we have about the whole card movement thing give me a little bit of pause when I think about this one. And when I think about mean games that I really enjoy, I'm thinking like Terra Nova and other games like that we've played that have just been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to think about a game like this and be like, okay, well, if I want to play a mean confrontational game that has deep strategy to it, is this going to be the first one that I come to? And maybe that's a benefit of being on this show and having played so many games that we've played, but I don't think this would be the first one that I would gravitate to. Like if somebody wanted to play it, I would play it for sure. So I found myself stuck between 3 and 4 here because I do think it's a good game. I don't think that there are flaws to it necessarily. Maybe if we played it more, we would figure out the whole dominant strategy thing, whether that's true. I think once you're aware of that bottom corner being important, people are going to fight over it, at which point then it becomes less valuable. So I don't know that that's necessarily a fault of the game. But I just found myself wishing I was playing Terra Nova or one of the other games that are also confrontational in this way, but somehow feel less directly personal and mean, but also more satisfying in strategy. I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it beyond that. So I settled on a 3. But I can see this game having legs to be a 4 for the right crowd. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So for me, this game was so close to being good for me. It was right on the line, kind of like Jason on this one. I kind of went back and forth in my own head between a 3 and a 4 because I do think the card movement mechanism around the board and picking who takes turns and the way the overbuilding works and valuations were all very interesting. However, the abusiveness of this game is too much for me. And that, again, I know that's weird because I think I've got the reputation as the guy that's kind of the masochist in the group, and I am in a lot of ways. But for me, I prefer the pain of, oh, do I do this or this? It's more like self-inflicted, right? Like me struggling to figure out what is the right path forward because the game is presenting me with hard choices. Whereas this one, the pain more comes from your opponent saying, oh, look, Chris has a really big area. Let's demolish it. And it getting just crushed into powder, right? That I don't love. And it just doesn't feel good, you know? And if that does happen, if you kind of put a target on yourself early, everybody joins forces and kind of snuffs you out, it can be really hard to come back from that. So for me, I think that knocks it down for me to this being a 3. Despite its good ideas, I don't think this is a game that I would enjoy playing anymore, to be quite honest. So give it a 3.
All the way around.
Have we been all aligned on all 3 reviews?
Have we really?
No, I know it's horrible.
Oh,
What are you
man,
doing?
you guys.
Just give it a 4, Bill.
I can't. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well,
About it.
anything we said piqued your interest. This game is available at Noble Knight Games. So, as mentioned earlier, Noble Knight are our sponsors, our friends to the north, and we'd appreciate it if you'd like to give it a try buying it from them. We do have a 10% discount code, GEMS10 off. That's GEMS10 off. You can get 10% off of your order. There are also 8 copies available on the BGG Marketplace as well.
So since you got inside channels with Noble Knight, can you get them to get Scharfe Schoten?
Maybe.
Yeah. Give them a call.
Yeah.
Tell them, say, hey.
I'll have to talk
Work
to
this
them
out.
about that. Yeah. See if they got some connections.
Awesome.
All right. Well, those are our thoughts on Kilt Castle.
Kilt Castle. You turtle loving wee man.
Wee man.
Yeah, I got a wee man. Turtle loving them weasels on a half shell.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us again for this episode of Hidden Gems. If you like what we're doing here, please remember that it's a huge help to us if you give us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform, or follow us on one of our many social media platforms. Check out the BGG Guild or our Discord channel if you want to interact with us or share a game that you feel is a hidden gem. And if you're so inclined, please consider supporting the show over on our Patreon at patreon.com/hiddengemspodcast. Until next time, I'm your host, Jason.
It's Chris.
And this is Bill.
Thanks for listening.
This episode of Hidden Gems, number 55, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on October 11th, 2023. The air is cool and crisp. The leaves are changing. Halloween is just around the corner. And you know what that means. Join us again in 2 weeks for another Hidden Gems Halloween Spectacular as we review 3 more spooky gems. Has Jason brushed up on his Halloween trivia? Tune in to find out.
Is Jason going to have to spend 3 hours editing sound effects again?
Yes. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our Board Game Guild is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Ghidorah. Our Discord channel is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Snoozefest. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Caitlin Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Caitlin Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something you want to say about one of the games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, Guild number 3874. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems, and until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search.